Thank you for joining us. You are watching Christ Church of Flagstaff, a Sunday sermon. This is June 27th, 2021. Before we jump in, I just want to let you know about a few announcements of things that we have coming up. We have a short-term missions team that we are sending to Peru October 9th through the 17th. And if you are interested in that, or if you would like to help support the work that we are doing, there's a meeting on July 7th, and one of our partners, Lori Jo, will be joining us in person for that. Next, I have just a couple of dates that we want you guys to save and to be aware of. First is going to be August 15th, and that is a welcome back event. We are excited to welcome you back after a long time apart, and there's going to be festivities, and we just want you to keep that in your calendar and get ready for August 15th. Next, we have a golf tournament, and this is called Kids for Free, and this raises support for kids to go to camp. That is going to be held on August 23rd. If you're interested in that, you can find that at the website of kidsforfree.org, and that's FORE. Speaking of camp, we had just sent some preteen and middle school campers, and they have just come back, and they're sharing wonderful stories of the great time that they had at the UCYC campgrounds. And it's because of you and your financial support that they were able to go and experience Jesus and make new relationships with their friends here. If you are not already and you would like to be a financial partner with CCOF, you can see the ways to do that here on the screen.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us here at Christ Church of Flagstaff. I'm so excited we're going to talk about FOMO together. And before I get to that, I just spent the last week at United Christian Youth Camp. You just heard Shay thank you and show you a little bit of what happened there. It was an amazing week. And I was one of the middle school leaders. I was in charge of the 8th grade boys. And we had a great time. In fact, here's a picture of me and some of the other leaders, a few of the kids from our group. And we just had so much fun. Thank you so much for making that happen. And the thing that it just reinforced for me these 5 days with 51 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and there were a couple dozen grade school kids also there, is camp is such an important time in a kid's life, and especially our kids coming out of a pandemic, and there was no Zoom sessions at camp. It was awesome. Everything was in person. It was amazing. But the other thing that really struck me, and is just the importance of middle school and this transition season of our life. And as a church, we've always cared and poured so much of our time and energy and resources into the next generation. And watching these boys, especially in my group, navigating life right now. Friends, we cannot emphasize our student ministry too much. It is so crucial in watching these kids. Some of them from great situations, some of them from hard situations. They just need us. They need healthy adults in their life in addition to their parents and their families. And so I just want you to think about, is there a role you could play with students in our student ministry? I don't know what it might be, but you see on the screen right here, you see the times. Our high school ministry meets Sunday nights right now, or Monday nights, at 6 p.m. Our middle school group meets Sunday during our third service at 11:30, right here on campus in person. And Celeste Hageman is our youth pastor. She's an amazing leader, an amazing person of God, woman of God, and she would love to hear from you. If there's some interest you have to just start a conversation, we need people to invest in the life of these middle school and high school students at this crucial juncture of their life and their development. And I just want you to think about it. It was such an impactful week for me to do that again. It'd been a long time since I'd been at camp as a leader, and it was a blessing. So would you think about it? We're going to talk about FOMO, and we're wrapping up this series. I want you to think about a question. What is your financial plan? When you look at your financial situation, the things God has entrusted you, your money, your resources, what is your plan? Have you ever sat down with a financial planner? That's their first question. What's your goal? And I've always said, well, to win the lottery, of course, right? To have more money magically. Well, that's not how this stuff works. But what is your plan based upon? Is it Is it based on ROI, return on investment? Like you're all about the future and investing in your 401k and your stocks and your Robinhood. Like, what's your plan? Maybe your plan is really to just have great experiences and fun. And that's your financial plan. I see so many people today, that's the plan. And that's not necessarily a bad plan. Neither is a plan based on ROI. But some of us, if we're honest, we don't even have a plan, and that's our plan. It's like we don't plan, like we don't do anything with it. It just happens. Well, that actually becomes your default laissez-faire plan. We all have a plan. What's your plan? Think about it. Does your plan, what is it you're hoping it accomplishes? Do you want your plan to make you more comfortable, or do you actually have a plan to become more generous? Because I actually think all of our plans fall into those two categories when we really stop and look at them. And don't you want to be more generous? I mean, I've never met anybody who says, my goal is to be called greedy. My goal is to lack generosity. And see, I found myself as I look back at my life in this topic of generosity and financial stewardship and how it drives FOMO and this fear of missing out, is I've wanted at different times in my life to be more generous than I actually could afford to be. And I kept thinking for a really long time, I found myself in this like trap, really this lie, that if I didn't have a large amount of money to contribute to something, to a cause, to a missionary, to a campaign, to an organization, that if what I gave wasn't large, then it wouldn't matter. And I often discounted in my life what God could do with something as simple as, or as small as what $10 feels like. And I realized that's just my perspective. That's many of our perspective. We just look at things like money from this worldly viewpoint. We don't see it the way God sees it. I remember one time many, many years ago, Christy and I were at an event. We're listening to a pastor talk about generosity. And he told the story about being at a restaurant recently with his family. And they started a conversation with their server. And their server was a single mom who was really struggling, trying to get by. And they decided that when their meal ended, they were going to give the regular tip, plus they were going to add $100 because they just felt compelled to just be generous with this server. And her situation touched their heart as a family. And I remember hearing that story and thinking, the next time I go out to eat at a restaurant, I'm going to do that exact same thing. And so not very much later, my wife and I and our kids, we're at a restaurant, and the server, we start talking a little bit, and we don't really get to know her that much. We don't know much about her story, but I decide we're going to do the exact same thing. And so when our bill comes, I say something to Christy and our kids, and they're all just like, wow, that's awesome that we're going to do that. Like, we're going to give this server a $100 extra tip. And we did. And then the thing that hit me really actually as it was happening, and the part of the story that is like full disclosure, like we're friends, right? So we have to be honest with each other. I was using a credit card to pay for that meal that I wasn't going to be able to pay off for a really long time. Like, this is a point in our life and in our journey financially where we had consumer debt that we were carrying, and we shouldn't have even gone out to dinner. Like, we should have stayed at home and ate sandwiches, right? But we didn't want that. We wanted something else, and our financial plan wasn't really working back then. And so we chose generosity that we couldn't even afford, and honestly, it's kind of a little bit of an embarrassing story, but we're friends. I thought I should tell the truth. And what I was doing back then was just trying to make myself feel better. It wasn't actually doing what God asked us to do. Look at what he says to the church through Paul the apostle, the church in Corinth. Look at this. This is 1 Corinthians 16. He says, I want you to deal with the offering of money for the Lord's people. Do what I told the churches in Galatia to do. On the first day of every week, each of you should put some money away. The amount should be in keeping with how much money you make. Save the money so that you won't have to take an offering when I come. See, what God's word tells us, what Christians have known for a really long time, and I hadn't quite figured out at this point of my story that I just shared, is that the key to being generous, the key to generosity is really intentionality. Our financial plan was just do whatever made sense in the moment. There wasn't intentionality. It was very reactive, very just go with the flow. Whatever happens, we'll take care of it. And Paul says to this group of believers, be intentional. And be intentional within the realm of what you have. See, the reason I put that dinner on a credit card is we were just like living moment to moment. We weren't making great decisions. We weren't living within our means at that time. And it's hard to say that. It's embarrassing to say it. We had a spending and management problem. And I wanted to be generous. But my financial plan was just being lazy. And I was choosing comfort over generosity. How are you choosing comfort? How is your financial plan really just about your comfort? Like ours used to be. Look what Paul says later, this same group of people. He writes another letter that we have. He says, here's my opinion about what is best for you in that matter. And he's been talking about finances and giving and generosity and living within your means and being generous for people in need. He says, here's my opinion about that. Last year, you were the first to give. You were also the first to want to give. So finish the work. Then your desire to do it will be matched by your finishing it. Give on the basis of what you have. Do you really want to give? Then the gift is measured by what someone has. It is not measured by what they don't have. And I used to fall in this mindset that I needed to give like the way I heard other people talk about giving. And see, I often think about generosity and as like I'm proving or earning something. And maybe you think of it as like, well, that's for someone else or I don't trust. Or what if it was just, we stopped putting all those excuses in front of God and we started being intentional. Because see, here's the thing. I believe what I found in this great adventure of generosity is that it's available to anyone who's intentional. Not just people who have high income, lots of money. I think the adventure of generosity, listen to this again, it's available to any of us who will choose to live with intentionality. That you would choose intentionality over FOMO, the fear that drives us to make so many decisions. When I made that choice, this adventure of generosity became not some guilt-ridden, comparative, like do what other people do. It's like just do what God's put in front of us. And what I've seen is that as Christy and I and our family, we become so much more intentional. We started just some simple things, like an idea I heard years ago from my friend Ashley, who's a pastor in the Valley. He started this and he was telling me about it. It was such a simple, intentional plan financially that we just started using it. And what it was is that we have, like when I get paid and our check is deposited electronically, like almost everyone's is, that check, the direct deposit, goes in a different bank account for different purposes. We have 4 basic places that our income goes to automatically, like it's broken up by percentage, and you can automate all these things. I thought it was hard. It was actually really easy. Is we have a bills account. And so our mortgage and electric and like cell phone and water, all those core bills that are very, very similar, very consistent month to month, an amount of money to pay those goes into one account. We have another account that's for medical expenses. It actually equals our family's main deductible for our medical coverage, broken up month to month. And so that goes in there. So last year when I had shoulder surgery, my son had knee surgery, the money to pay for those things was there. It was ready. It was waiting. We have an emergency fund for the things that just happen in life. And then we have a 4th account that is just our day-to-day expenses. And so in my wallet, I have a debit card for that account. And that account is set up in such a way that you, and you should do this if you don't, is that spending account, just the stuff, going out to dinner, getting gas in the car, just those random things that we all have, right? When that account is empty, it declines. There's no overdraft protection. There's no backup. It's like, literally there have been places where at times the money that's spendable that is random, it's just gone. And I have to go, oh, sorry, I need to put that back. We can't buy that. We're out. So we go and wait until the next paycheck refills that account. And then all of the money for all these different things is there when we need it. And friends, like a financial plan could just be something really simple like that, where it's just intentional. And see, when Christy and I started being more intentional and committed to living within our means, not worrying about what we're missing out, being able to stay at home and eat a sandwich for dinner sometimes, we'd really rather go, somewhere bougie like Red Lobster, right? At one point, I couldn't afford to be generous with a $100 tip at a meal that I was putting on a credit card and took months to pay for, right? And now a season of intentionality has just put us in a place where a few weeks ago, when we received money in that stimulus package, like so many of you did, we gave almost all of that away to other people who needed help and more. And I don't say that to brag. It's just that God can use our intentionality. Our whole life, and I've talked about this before, Christy and I have always given a tithe. We started at 10%. And in this season of intentionality, it's allowed us to increase. And I looked at it just the other day. And in 2020, we gave to this church and to other ministries in God's kingdom 14%. We've gone from 10 to 14%. And you know what I'm really looking forward to? I'm so excited that I can see in our financial plan the day that 20% is the norm for us. That's so exciting, and I can't wait for that. And I don't tell you that because I want you to think that's a lot. It's not. It's not a lot. It's just being intentional has allowed us to do a little bit more and a little bit more. And it's exciting. It's exciting to realize that what we're missing is nothing. We're on this adventure. And once Christy and I just became intentional, we've been able to practice generosity in amazing ways. And I share this with you because you could experience it too. And the adventure that generosity brings my life and my family. I don't want you to miss that. And I think it's attainable for you. And maybe you're thinking of all the reasons it isn't. I think it is. I want you to listen to a conversation I had recently with a friend of mine named Ryan. Hey, this is my friend Ryan Ontiveros, and I want you to hear his story. He and his wife Stephanie are such great, faithful supporters of our church and many other ministries, and he agreed to share a little bit of what generosity is doing in his life. Ryan, thanks so much being here today.
No problem.
And sharing with all of us. As I said, you and your wife, your family are just, very faithful, generous part of our church. And we're so grateful for that. How did you learn generosity? Like, where did that come from in your life?
Oh, I was taught as a child that anytime I got any kind of birthday money or money I earned or whatever, I had to set aside a certain portion of that because God blessed me with that money or blessed me with the ability to earn that money. Right. And it's not good to rob God, give back his money, tithe it to the church. And my mom taught me that. Her parents taught her that. Her great-grandparents taught my grandparents that. And as far as I know, as far back as my mom's side of the family goes, I'm pretty sure they all tithe. I can't think of someone that didn't. Yeah. No, that's a great legacy. Tell us about the impact that's made on you, on your family. Like, where have you seen a difference? What's generosity doing? My family has several businesses, and those businesses tithe. And in 2019, those businesses tithe the most they'd ever tithe. Wow. And then 2020 comes around, and everything's weird. Everything's shut down. Like I said, they're tourist dependent. Yeah. And it's not looking great. and business is down sometimes 90%. I think I told you if we were down 75%, that was a great day.
Yeah.
But it was 90, 85. It's just really, really, really bad. And then as things started to open up later around June-ish or so of last year, things got a little bit better. And then we got real busy.
Yeah.
And then we buckled down. We made it through. And then on October 1st, that's when I got this card from my mom. Like I said, it's a very religious card.
It's a great card.
It's Psalms 107:1.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Give thanks to the Lord. And she reminded me of something that I told her back in March. Like I said, remember 2019 record year, we gave the most we ever given. So she wrote, "It's been quite a year. Just when you think you've seen it all, a global pandemic hits and as a result created a whole new set of challenges. You never know what you're made of until you're tested. I've had a bird's eye view of how you responded, and I couldn't be prouder. I'm especially pleased with your decision to tithe no less this year than we did last year because we weren't going to let a virus get in the way of giving to God's kingdom. This shows me that you clearly know where your help comes from. This showed that your trust is in God. You used wisdom as you once again navigated through choppy waters. Good job." And what that reminded me of is in March of last year, when things were bad, we were way down. I told my mom, it's not going to be a great year for the business's tithing. It's going to be pretty terrible. But just because we're suffering, there's still people we support who are suffering. That suffering doesn't stop. The enemy's kingdom doesn't stop working. So we're not going to stop either. At the end of this fiscal year, which was October 1st-ish, September 30th or so, we're going to give not one penny less than we did in 2019. Whether that comes from us not getting paid, that's fine. Don't pay me. And if that's not enough, we're going to pull it out of our bank accounts and make it up.
Your personal accounts.
We will give it, we'll pull it out of our pockets. We're going to make it up. We're not going to tithe one penny less, personally or business-wise, than we did last year. That was after she met with the accountant. We ended up having the best year we've ever had, financially and tithing-wise. The business tithed more than we did in 2019, and that's nothing short of a miracle because it was bad.
Yeah, because you said you make that commitment in March. I mean, we all remember March of 2020. And your tourist-dependent businesses, nobody's going anywhere. You know, we're all stay-at-home orders, and 90% down day to day. Like that's amazing statement to say we're going to keep it the same because we don't know when you say that you don't know how long this is going to last.
No,
right?
I figured we'd have to not get paid. I figured we'd have to probably not get paid. And maybe pull a little bit out of our own pockets at the end of the year to make up for it. Yeah.
You told me when we were talking about this before, when you give, you kind of correlate it to being a superhero in a movie, a character. And talk about that, because I think that's just an interesting perspective I hadn't really thought about before, but it really resonates with me. I think it would resonate with people watching this today.
Well, when you tithe and you give into the kingdom of God, it's a big problem for the enemy. Like, he does not want you doing that. He does not want that at all.
Yeah.
So what I feel like when John Wick walks into a room of bad guys and just tears it up, that's how I feel every time I tithe. I feel like I can walk right into the devil's lair or his offices or whatever and just tear it apart. And it makes me feel real good that I get to be a part of God's kingdom and get to kick the enemy in the ribs while I'm there.
Yeah. I love that we're talking about John Wick at church. You know, that's just like all three of them are great movies. Yeah. We're really happy. We were celebrating earlier. The fourth one's in production right now.
Yes.
I follow John Wick on Facebook.
Good call.
And it's the best part of Facebook is.
I'm sure it is. I'm not on there, but I might get on there for that.
Yeah, you're not missing much else, but just that. I just think that perspective is so unique that when you invest in the kingdom of God, you feel like you're kicking Satan in the ribs, is what you just said, right? Like that is such an interesting perspective that I think we don't really correlate. Like when we do that, like your family and our family, we support our church and other ministries, and we're stopping sex trafficking and poverty and hunger and providing the gospel in places where Satan wants other things to happen.
Yeah.
And that's such a cool perspective. What is it you would say to someone? You're sitting down with a friend who's on the fence with this whole thing, or maybe even not even on the fence. Like they're like, no way, you can't, that's my money, or I don't trust churches, or I don't want to give. Generosity, this is mine.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to figure out what to do with what God has given them, however they see it. What would you say to that person?
I would tell them is one harmless thing you can do is you can always try it and test it out. I'm not saying test Lord your God or anything. I'm just saying just test it out. And one thing I've noticed is that sometimes when you're in the midst of being blessed, you can't see it until several years later. So what I would do is I would try it. I'd write down kind of where I'm at spiritually, emotionally, financially, and then this is the day I start tithing. And maybe a couple months from now, right where you're at again, and then 6 months from now, right where you're at again. I know you have to follow the rules, like give with a glad heart,
Right.
giving, keeping with income, and then see where you're at in 6 months, see where you're at in a year,
Right.
see where you're at in a decade. And I promise you, it's not going to ring hollow. It'll ring true. God keeps his promises. He says, if you sow generously, you'll reap generously. It's not necessarily financially generously, but
Right.
it could be other things. But he keeps his promises, and it's not gonna ring hollow.
Yeah. No, I love that, being able to say, here's where it is today, and here's the day I make this commitment or decision, and where does it go? And it sounds like you're even saying, try it, and if it's not working,
why would you be a part of it? If it's not working, why would you be a part of it?
Yeah.
I guarantee you it does work.
Right.
And you will like being a part of it. And like I said, you do get to feel like you're kicking Satan in the ribs. And it's cool to be a problem for the enemy. It's real cool. Like I told you, my family's been a problem. I'm a problem. Me and my wife are huge problems. My kids are going to be problems.
Yeah.
Always going to be problems. It's nice to be a problem for the enemy.
I love that. Thanks for sharing today, man.
Yeah,
I
no
appreciate
problem.
this. Thanks so much.
Could you let Ryan's story inspire you? I know it's been so inspirational to me. The first time I heard that story that you just saw, it just impacted me. And here's the thing, it made me realize, is it's not just Ryan and his family that are a problem for our enemy. It's all of us. Like you're a part of a church. I'm a part of a church that wants to be a problem for our enemy. We want to be in the way of what Satan is trying to accomplish in this world. You see, when I saw last week 51 middle school students experiencing camp in relationships, doing incredible things, fun, learning, just being kids. You know why that happened? It's because groups of people like us, our church at the end of December, sent a $50,000 gift to United Christian Youth Camp so they could be ready for those middle schoolers this summer. You helped make that happen. We helped parents whose kids were there that needed financial assistance. So many of you responded to that opportunity. We made a problem for the enemy who would love nothing more than to keep those kids isolated, keep filling their minds and their hearts with anxiety and messages and problems. And we're a problem for him because we do simple things like help our kids go to camp in a time where he's attacking the next generation. We're making a difference. And this idea that we could be like John Wick walking into a room. I mean, what a picture, right? What if you and I could do more and we could become a problem? I love that. And I owe Ryan that language. Become a problem. What would it look like for you and I to become more of a problem for the enemy, for the one who wants to kill, steal, and destroy? Many of us intend to be generous. I've already shared, I wanted to be more generous than I could really afford to be. Because our current P&L, it just doesn't allow it, does it? I just want to challenge you. We have something to help you in that. If you want to be generous, but you need help getting to a point where it's even possible, here in August, starting on August 19th, we're going to offer Financial Peace University. Dave Ramsey is a very well-known, well-respected teacher, and it's his curriculum, and some folks in our church, Amber and Andrew are their names. They're real people who went through this years ago, and it impacted them. And these principles have impacted me and our family, and maybe it's what you need. It's going to be on Thursday nights. It starts the 19th. If you go to ccof.church/events, you can get the information, you can register, or just ask some more questions. Because the plan you have may be working for your comfort.
But if it needs to adjust, if you and I just need help and we can help each other in this, it might mean you spend some time learning a new way, learning some new practices, getting some practical help, being in a circle with some other people who want the same thing, being led and mentored by someone who's down the path. See, I fear missing out. I know you do too. What is it you fear missing out on? What's holding you back from generosity? Because what I fear missing out is the opportunity to change lives, to impact this community. Ryan said it so well at the end of his video, his story. He said, why don't you write down where you are? In a journal or make a note on your phone. And just, where are you at today? Where are you at financially? Where are you at spiritually? Where are you at relationally, emotionally? And then become generous. Start following God's plan, giving to his kingdom and his work in whatever amount makes sense. And in 6 months, go back to that note and see what God does. Just try it, as Ryan said. What do you have to lose? What's holding us back? I don't know what's holding you back. But for me, it really just needed to become a shift in intentionality. I'm going to pray and ask God to help us. Help us all become more of a problem. God, I thank you. I thank you so much for the way that you've impacted my life through this topic, through this journey, this adventure of becoming more generous, becoming more intentional with what you've given. And I thank you for Ryan and Stephanie and their family and his mom and his grandparents and his great-grandparents and this legacy of stewardship and generosity. God, you're using it in incredible ways. Let us be more of a problem for our enemy. God, let us bring more of your kingdom to this community. Help us do what you're calling us toward. In Jesus' name, amen.